Hi everybody from TechnoLost and welcome to this video review of the Samsung Galaxy S Duos. First of all, I would like to thank our friend at Global World Mobile for this device we have for our review. Well, we saw in the other focus the multimedia capabilities as well as the performance and the gaming capabilities of this little dual SIM device. Now, we still haven't talked about what is the main feature of this mobile phone, which is the dual SIM functionalities. Well, we have quite a good management of the dual SIM here. As you can see from the notification bar, we have two signal indicator, as well as we have a small icon here with this home. This means that the main SIM is selected. As you can see, if we pull down the notification bar and we have the here notification area, we see that we have two buttons here. The first one, let us choose the first SIM, the second one, as you can see, of course. So changing the SIM here means that we change the default SIM for both phone calls and SMS. But this change is not for the data connection, as I will show you later. So changing the SIM here, as you can see, change both the small square around the default signal bar as well as the icon indicating the selected SIM here in the notification bar. Of course, we have here the name of the two mobile provider. Then, as you can imagine, every kind of menu dealing with the dual SIM is duplicated here. So if we get inside here the for instance the messaging, and we just choose the settings, we have two different menu for what concern the SMS notification. So if we get inside notification settings, we have here the first SIM and the second SIM, so we can decide whether or not to have notification for any one of each SIM, as well as what kind of ringtone to have for one SIM respect to another. Well, what else? Dealing with the icon we have selected here for the SIM, if we get inside the logs here, the call logs, we can see that every person that sent us a message or a call has the small icon, that tell us on which SIM we did receive the SMS or the call. As well as if we get inside the contacts, swiping here from left to right or from right to left, just use the default SIM we selected here in the notification area. Then, what else? If we get inside the settings, we can finally see the SIM card manager menu. We have here this big icon representing the first and the second SIM. So we just can select one or the other SIM, and touching just the name, we can, for instance, select a different icon for each SIM, as well as, of course, a different name. So the name and the icon are the one that we can see here in the notification area. Then we can, of course, activate each SIM, so we can decide whether we have both SIM inside the SIM slots. We just can activate one of these two SIMs. Then this kind of setting, which is receive incoming calls via other SIM card while using data service, it's dealing with the fact that if we use data connection, the second SIM, the one which is not using data connection, cannot receive any kind of incoming call, at least until we select these settings. So if we select this one like this, we can finally receive incoming call on the second SIM, or better, on the SIM that doesn't have the data connection activated, even if we have data connection. But this is the warning message telling us that the data speed will be really slower. And if you saw my focus on the benchmark, you should have already seen that the data connection gets about 10 times slower using these settings. But anyway, this is the only way to have both SIM receiving incoming calls. Otherwise, the SIM which doesn't have data connection activated will just be a SIM to perform calls, so outgoing calls and not incoming calls. Then we can select here which SIM use the data service network. Of course, as I told you before, selecting here the default SIM doesn't change in any way the default data service network, so they are two separate settings. Then we have here the dual SIM always on functionality. What does this mean? We have, of course, two SIM here, and we can receive calls on both SIM. But if we are receiving a call on one of these two SIMs, the other one is like offline. I mean, if you receive, for instance, a call on the first SIM, the second one is considered offline. What can we do to have dual SIM always on? If we just put the phone number of each SIM, these are of course fake numbers, and if we just insert the SIM numbers here, and we select if we want both SIM having online or just SIM1 regarding SIM2 or SIM2 regarding SIM1, the phone set up the forwarding service on each SIM to another, as well as the notification call for background incoming call. Just to give you a quick example, if we have an active call on the first SIM and then the second SIM is offline. So if someone calls us on the second SIM, the forwarding service just forward the call from the second SIM to the first one, and having activated the notification for background incoming calls, we will receive a notification on the first SIM for the incoming calls, which was in the call on the second SIM forwarded to the first one. So this is the way Samsung thought about having dual SIM always on. Anyway, this is not maybe the cheapest way to have it, because it's you, the one who's going to call to pay for the forwarding call from the second SIM to the first one, or from the first one to the second one. So this is maybe just a way to just a workaround, but it's not a real dual SIM always on functionality. Moreover, if we get inside the mobile network settings, I want just to show you these small things. Of course, we have two menus here. As I told you, every kind of menu dealing with the SIM will be duplicated. But this is really interesting. We have here dual SIM. Both SIM can have 3G connectivity, but not at the same time. So if the first SIM is the one having data connection activated, we must select the first SIM like WCDMA, and the second SIM must be GSM only. If we want to switch and have the second SIM connected on the data network, we just have to first switch the settings for the data network on the second SIM, then select the first SIM GSM mode only, and the second one like WCDMA. So as you can see, we can switch from the first to the second SIM for what concerns data connection as well as 3G connection, but we cannot have 3G connection on both SIM at the same time. So this should be maybe everything dealing with the dual SIM functionality. So I guess we can go on and give a look at, for instance, the mobile browser. Well, I installed the Flash player on these small devices. just let me switch on the desktop mode for this site, which is an Italian newspaper site, which is quite heavy. So just to give you an idea, as you can see, we have the flash player here on request. So if I try to scroll the page while it's loading, you can see that it's not that bad. I mean, it's not fluid, it's not smooth, we have some stutter, but nevertheless it's quite usable. So it's not a drama, I mean, we can use it. Even, I mean, pinch zooming is not that bad. I mean, it's not the smoothest one I've ever tried, never, and it's not even, I mean, sorry, the best one, but it's usable, of course, as the scrolling one. So the situation gets really, worse when we activate the flash player. Just let me show you. If I click on this, sorry, here we go. If we click on any kind of flash, content, the flash player starts loading, and here it's what happened when the flash player is loaded. So the site, it's, the scrolling is not that rapid, it's not that fast, it's not smooth, and moreover the pinch to zoom, it's like sometimes it's like stuck and you cannot move. Pinch to zoom, as you can see, it's terrible. It's not, sometimes it's not even moving. So definitely this mobile device doesn't deal with the flash player, so maybe it's better not to use it at all on this small device. Of course, the quite old CPU, cannot manage with the flash player. Then I choose just let me show you, I'm using here Swift key. The reason is that I have, quite big fingers, and the default Samsung keyboard that I will show you in a few seconds, it's the same that you will find in many other Samsung devices of the last 2 years. It's not, that nice for me, because the buttons are too small and too near one to each other. That's why I prefer using Swift key. But aside these things, the keyboard is okay. Then, as I told you during the unboxing that I would have tried to use big micro SD card, and here I have my micro SD card, which is a 64 gigabyte. So you can read it here. So no problem in using more than 32 gigabyte of micro SD card, although the official specs just states the up to 32 gigabyte. I even tried using the USB host adapter, but without any kind of luck. So this mobile device cannot use the USB host mode. Then, as you could see during this review, the unit is not that smooth and that's fluid. I mean, the CPU is quite old, the hardware is not a top-notch device, so we can see it in everyday use. I mean, it's still usable. But sometimes we have some small, problems, like it got stuck somewhere, and you can use, you continue touching it and moving, but nothing happens for a few seconds, and then it starts, acting altogether. I even have a pair of cold, hot reboot during use. But I guess it's just a problem with this unit and not with the Galaxy S Duos in general, because I've been looking for it in several forums and I didn't find any other, case of hot reboot like mine. But I think it's fair to be noticed. Then the battery lasts more or less for a single day with medium usage. I mean, I thought I could achieve, better result with the battery, but maybe the dual SIM do, you know, drain the battery quite a lot. So just to sum up everything, this is of course a dual SIM device, and if you want to choose it, I think you'd better consider that dual SIM functionalities is the main feature you are looking for. Nevertheless, the phone is quite usable, but the hardware is, you know, not that recent. It's quite old, sorry. And of course, the device is not that smooth, and it's not that fluid, and sometimes, you know, gets stuck somewhere. So, for what concern the review of the Samsung Galaxy S Duos, that's all. Once more, thanks for watching, and bye from TechnoLost.